Thoughts? Concerns?
Yeah, plenty. I'm okay. So this well is going far deeper. Now, I suspected that there was a chance that if we're playing with Back to the Future's continuity, that if we write, if we correct the timeline, then obviously the hellscape that you and I presently live in would be overwritten by the, flying car future of Back to the Future 2, and then also like we've seen in the comic books, like a couple decades afterwards. So that's what I am surprised is that you're making me deal with it, which is like it's cool and compelling, and also I'm like holy shit, like there's a lot of repercussions here.
I had originally thought about ending it as soon as you made the jump through time before you would get to know that it was that 2016.
Yeah.
But then I thought, fuck it. And then
so now we're just seeing what happens.
So now, well, I mean, I don't mean end the entire experience, end it there, but rather end this session when you made the jump and leave you hanging as to whether or not it's that 2016 or not. But then as soon as we landed, I'm like, nah, we got to go for it. So this is just but a slice of like, of what else might be happening. And again, this is and I only felt comfortable doing that because you were no pun intended, you were in the driver's seat for like so much of it. Yeah. So it was like you clearly were like, I want to get you had this driver like I need to know if things are okay. So it felt like a cheap shot just to be like, I don't know. So instead it was like, well, let's at least show you where you are so that you the player knows where you are, but you the character would be like, what the hell do I even begin to do with this information now?
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. I'm excited to see where this goes. Poor Kate.
We're left off at just as much of a cliffhanger as the last one was. In terms of like my plan, air quotes. It's like, let's see where it goes. And this last one fell together once I had a couple beats put in there. I was like, wait a minute. And I was like, oh wait, I got it now. And then the rest of it came together. And again, you took it in directions that I wasn't. I was like, oh, all right, we're doing this. And then so again,
I assume you didn't intend for Kate and Betty to go on a date.
Not really, but it was like I was like, well, I don't know how Kate's going to handle it, but like let's see. And then it was like, well, now we're running with this. And then so everything about Betty, I knew where Betty was starting, but I didn't know where you were going to take Betty.
Right.
So that was very much a collaborative story decision that I'm very pleased with. But again, this is the nature of this type of experience that I was trying to make, where it was very I have to reemphasize, even though I say it like all the time, I really wanted you to feel like you were making decisions that had an effect, and it wasn't so much of I'm going to try to maneuver into making a decision that I want her to make.
Of course, yeah.
But rather like truly try to react to what you were doing on the fly.
The whole time we're doing this, I'm consistently impressed with what you're doing because you're playing so many different parts, and only sometimes do you have any inkling of how you want them to go down, and it's all fully improvised. So like unless you're citing some notes that you set up for explaining time travel, it's a very different thing. So I'm absolutely fascinated by what you're doing because I think you're at a level of game mastering that I'm very much in awe of, and I'm like, I don't know if I don't think I could do what you're doing. I think you're operating at this this storyteller level that's like
I'm stretching my muscles really far.
Yeah,
I'll put it that way.
Are you tired? How do you feel?
I'm very thirsty from a lot of talking. I do feel tired, but not like I ran a marathon.
Yeah.
My voice is always tired at the end of it because I'm talking for like multiple people, especially people talking to themselves.
I mean, you're operating at this insane level. And I'm very impressed that like sometimes I'm not pulling my weight. Like
I mean, but it's all to get you to feel like you're in a situation that feels alive.
Yeah, and so if I do.
Yeah, as long as you don't feel like I'm just talking to myself and be damned whatever you have to say. As long as we're avoiding that, then good.
Yeah, the thing is I'm not doing is I'm not being as reckless as Marty McFly.
Right.
And that's like because I wouldn't be.
Right. But that feels honest.
Yeah.
And which is nice. But it does mean I have to do a lot more talking, which isn't bad. It just means I feel like I have the need to fill in the gaps a bit more, which is fine, and I think does make the world feel more fleshed out, and it helps you feel informed and make better decisions.
Yeah, no, I'm as usual like loving this experience, and I think like all that interaction with Betty was really great, and it's pretty interesting from a lot of angles for me, because like I've never been a high schooler dating somebody, really. Like I did have a long-term relationship in high school, and it was like I had moments, like, but it was only as like I guess it was probably around Kate's age when I was like, actually kind of I didn't really. Kate's more confident than I was, and so this is a very alien experience all around, and it's doing it like in this like time period, and dealing with like the social baggage of that, and now like having to step into a family and a life that isn't my own, and maybe like and dealing with like having another me, like, God, Doc can't get back to the house soon enough, like.
But yeah, if I had to guess in terms, because like again, I've only had the loosest of outlines of like where things would go. The nitty gritty details were kind of going on the fly. If I had to tell you where I thought you were in terms of like the overall of like everything that I kind of had a contingency for, this is probably a midway point.
A midway point to what?
To a potential ending if you go in that direction.
I'm in the middle.
Depending, maybe closer to the end. You're either at the middle or you're more than halfway.
I'm in no hurry to end it. I'm just shocked, because I mean, of course, like when we ended the first session, like I thought this was a short experiment. I didn't realize, like, I didn't realize that.
Well, it could have ended. It could have ended there if you were like, "Nah, I'm good, like I'm done." Yeah. But otherwise, it's like,
no, I'm involved. I'm engaged.
Yeah.
I'm to be wed.
But as long as you're having fun with it and want to see it through to the end, there's places to go and times to be.
Yeah. This is a perpetually fascinating experiment, and I can't even begin to wrap my head around where the fuck it's going at this point.
Well, you're not supposed to.
Yeah. I mean, I am always as lost as Kate is. And even when I've got the knowledge of like, okay, I know Back to the Future, it's still like I'm having to contend with the fact that I don't ever truly know anything. I'm really impressed by a couple things here. So like the ways that we've come into the Back to the Future timeline from a point of a fork, and Marty solves the fork, but then obviously we come in from this sidestep that kind of in a lot of ways I don't know what it does to the Marty who had to go to the parallel universe and all the other things. I don't know how that goes down exactly, but it's a really fascinating sidestep, and I've been thinking about this for weeks now, but how great it is that or what a good idea it is to explore Back to the Future as like everyone's like, oh, 2020 is the worst and our timeline is the bad timeline and everything. Like that's a sentiment that everybody feels.
Yeah.
And to use that as a fulcrum for the Back to the Future narrative, and kind of like instilling a degree of hope in a weird sort of way.
That is my goal. Because no shit, this morning when I got up and I checked my phone, I was just browsing Reddit. I saw yet another meme in the Back to the Future subreddit that got like 1,000 upvotes or whatever, that said, "Hey, can anyone tell Doc and Marty to come fix our timeline? They got to get on this shit." And it's like, we've been hearing that meme since 2016.
Yeah.
And it's always, I don't want to say it bugs me. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, and that's not even what put the idea in my head originally, but just the idea that we have a way of living in such a present time that we don't think about things from it's hard to see something from another person's perspective, let alone the context of another time. So I thought doing a role play time travel experience would be a fun way to explore other times and other people, to show how people are similar and different. And Back to the Future presented a unique opportunity in the zeitgeist in terms of like real life looks like a shitty, alternate timeline from Back to the Future. So the idea being like, let's use that as an excuse for mechanics, like time travel mechanics, and then kind of show that everywhere we're going, shit's going down, and we're all playing it by ear, like even when you're thrown back in time, you have knowledge of the future, but you're like, I'm making it up as I go along because you're just doing the best you can. And that kind of, I think that I didn't intend it to be exactly this, but the idea that we're feeling that anxiety everywhere we're going, like, so there's something to be said. I don't want to go too far into it because I don't want to lead into what I would imagine or what I would hope the takeaway message is from playing this game, because I would love to hear your thoughts after we finally, if and when we finally end this thing, like what sort of things Kate has to say. But I am curious because I won't go into it, but I do see a pattern and story, a deeper story forming here that I'm happy to say I feel is in step with a Back to the Future kind of story without just mimicking the same message.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
The idea of the future is what you make it. It's like, yes, it's a great message, but we've heard that story. This is Kate's story. What is Kate's story? And I sense something, but I won't go into it because that I don't want to tip my hand on anything.
Yeah. Okay. I love how we made the modification of taking the almanac out of play, and how then all of a sudden Back to the Future 2 did happen.
Yeah.
Which is great. Or like the rest of Back to the Future 2 happened.
Yeah. Well, hasn't happened yet.
Wait, what?
Back to the Future 2 hasn't happened yet.
When did what year was 2015, wasn't it?
They did, but this is Doc's first time in the future.
Oh no. What the fuck? But then Marty comes back. And shit.
Don't worry, I've already thought about this. Like I wouldn't. Don't think that you have fucked something up by taking Doc to 2016.
I mean, hey, I only know that I'm not worried about Kate thinking that. Kate only knows what Kate knows,
right.
So I'm not worried about having fucked anything up.
Yeah.
But I was impressed with the different layers of how all the sequences fit together, our timeline, the film's timeline, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Our timeline and the film's timeline are going to be intertwined in a strange. It's going to look like braided hair.
Yeah, which is perfect. That's the Mobius strip.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So, but then also dealing with, I guess, it's been a long time since I've read the comics, but I guess the piece of plot ambiguity of Doc needing to be in line for that lightning strike, and in order for that to happen, like having that variable of him knowing about it happening being a concern for him and all that, like this kind of like an extra little plot nod. Was that's all you, or is that something?
That was me?
Yeah,
because I realized that if 1955 Doc says, all right, I'm going to send you to 1885 to prevent me from getting shot, 1885 Doc, how the fuck, or I'm sorry, 1955 Doc, how the hell is that Doc going to work for the next 30 years on the DeLorean, survive the terrorist attempt on his life, go to the future, let Marty steal the book, knowing it's going to risk the entire space-time continuum, barely by the teeth of scrape by the skin of their teeth, they get to save it, just in the exact moment where he gets struck by lightning by random happenstance and gets sent back to 1885.
Yeah.
How can you ensure that you do that? The future you didn't know. The future you was just playing it by ear. So logically, the only way to ensure that you go through with it is to erase your memory. Because if he knew, if he always knew in the back of his head, I'm going to end up in 1885, and then that Doc goes into the future, gets struck by lightning, lands in 1885, and goes, now I have to wait for 6 months for Biff Tannen to kill me. Like that you can't do it. Like it just doesn't seem possible, or at least not without losing your mind. And if you lose your mind, then you're going to ruin the time stream.
Mm-hmm.
So the only logical solution was, in my mind, if this is indeed the same timeline where one thing affects the other, Doc has to forget. Like there's no other way. If he knew, that would alter everything. Unless you say this is a parallel timeline and stuff erases stuff and so on and so on. Time travel logic in Back to the Future is decent, but it's not flawless.
Right.
But I looked at that plot hole and said, well, can Kate was here fix that plot hole? And in my opinion, it does.
Yeah, no, that was great. It really does seem like that's, and the touch of like the FM signal, like beautiful. Mwah.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
that's fan-fucking-tastic. I love it.
That to me is mad science fun.
Yeah.
Which is what the game
I
should
mean,
be.
to me that says like, Doug Banks, you're a very good writer, and you know how, and someone should let you write Back to the Future. God damn it! But it doesn't matter because I mean, at the very least, you've already done it in a way that I hope people will like recognize and remember, because this has been wild and it's only getting started apparently.
Oh no, it's only about halfway through, or maybe a little bit more, depending on. Again, this is seriously. It depends on where you go and what you do, because you went off in directions this time. Every time we play the game, you go off in further and further tangential directions. From what I expect, but that's not bad, because I'm expecting the unexpected. I'm leaving it open because of that. But every time we play, you wander further and further from what I imagined, 6 months ago, what I would have dreamed would have happened. These characters, some of these characters didn't exist at all, and I don't know, it's great. So I look forward to the next one, even though I don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, well, okay. Me too. Very, very, very much. Like, I'm... As usual, you've left me on the edge of my seat, and I'm so excited to see what happens next, and to make it.
Yeah,
with you.
I mean, you're not going to see what happens next. You're going to
I'm going to live it.
You're going to live it because it's going to depend with each episode. More and more of your input is determined on what happens next, because that's what we're trying to do here, is to create a tailor-made interactive experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's get ice cream.